Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mary Appleget, and I am excited to have you here. This is my home office, and on Mondays, we are going to do live webinars where I get to share with you some of the things that go with the brain responsive approach, as well as some really hot trainings on the brain, teach to the brain, and to build desire and know that the heart will follow to those that you mentor. So I want to welcome you. And on the slideshow here, I also show John Appleget and our website, teachtothebrain.com. This will soon be a publishing house for those of you that are interested in publishing with Teach to the Brain, as well as pushing information and research that is brain responsive. So we're here to help you understand. And today I am in charge of this webinar, and we're going to title it Power versus Force. I'm going to teach you the information behind what I know of power versus force in teaching, parenting, coaching, and leading. So welcome. As I learn how to run through this, I'm going to encourage you guys to check out Teach to the Brain's master class. We have it at thebrainacademy.com, and it's an experiential introduction to the teaching, the principles and applications of brain responsive teaching, parenting, coaching, and leading. Check that out. I have the links posted below and on emails if you're part of our group. This is introducing the master course. I am the host of the Brain Academy. I'm an instructor of the 6-week brain responsive course. And you'll see this on the landing page of those links that we post below this video. And it's a 6-week program teaching and training parents, teachers, coaches, and leaders. Now, the brain responsive approach is a research-based multidisciplinary framework to the question of how our brain learns and responds best. We must investigate and implement the best, most effective strategies to use with individuals we teach, parent, coach, and lead. And the brain responsive approach creates self-directed, self-reliant, all right, doers and dreamers. And I have the experience of 35 years in the classroom, along with 20 years of leading in education. And I just know that doers and dreamers are not only what we need in our future, but they're the ones that actually make positive change for all of us. And that's what this program is designed to help you develop. So we'll help you develop also happiness and contentment within your team. So email us at info@brainacademy.com or mary@brainacademy.com, and we'll help you understand our 6-week program. Now, I want to thank you again. Our mission is to grow awareness and create a brain responsive movement, 10,000 strong. Okay, and it's happening as we speak. It's been exciting to see all of the positive feedback and comments we've received so far. So thank you for those of you that have done that. And I want to give a special thank you to those of you sharing our information, via our social media networks. Please continue to like, share, and chat. We really do appreciate your support. And in addition, I want to thank you for becoming part of a global community whose mission is to help teachers, parents, coaches, and leaders master the brain responsive approach. So if you've yet to opt in for our free membership program, here's the link listed here, www.brainacademy.com/Brain Academy Launch 2024. And that is happening right now. So please go there, opt in, and you'll be able to receive all of our free newsletters, podcasts, webinars. You'll be part of this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday free webinar series, as well as you're going to be able to get really good insight from others that know the brain responsive approach. Now, if you haven't done so, please make sure you download and print the Brain Responsive Notes booklet. It's attached below this video on YouTube, and it's attached at our links. If you search Brain Responsive Notes booklet, you should be able to see it as a free download right now at brainacademy.com. Now, I wanted you to remember something for all of us, teachers, parents, coaches, and leaders. So the goal is to guide learners to become self-directed and self-reliant. Okay? With regards to all of the different learning opportunities they are actively pursuing, we're their mentors. And it is really important to know that it leads to success and achievement, followed by happiness and contentment. Because anybody that's successful gets a little happier, right? And anyone that has achievement can get very content. So I want you to know your job is easier when your learners are self-directed and self-reliant. And it takes skill and mentoring and guidance. So here are some of the reminders from the core lessons of the brain responsive approach. And you will be able to receive these through our newsletter hub, as well as if you opt in at brainacademy.com, you'll be able to receive some of the core lessons for free. Okay, so when we guide someone through a learning process, having considered and planned the lesson based on their needs and their style of learning, okay, that's what we call brain responsive, the brain's needs. When we tell them what to think or correct their mistakes with punitive or negative feedback, ignoring that which they have done right, well, that is what we call deficit remediation. And that is your challenge. Can you identify when deficit remediation is put in action, pointing out someone's faults and telling them how to fix it? It's not always with words. Oftentimes it's just with expectations. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So deficit remediation is our challenge. Now, a strategy that I offered up in the first webinar prior to this, and it's the core lessons. It's powerful, and you can put it to use immediately in your home, your classroom, your office, or even on the playing field, coaches. You really have to create a zone that's a no can't zone. In other words, you're not going to teach them or accept that thought or voice in the environment. So I can't. We're just not going to accept that at all. We're going to absolutely eliminate it, and we're going to create the opposite, the can zone. In other words, I can do this, I can do that. It just takes a growth mindset. So here are some examples I offered up in the core lessons. This one happened to me. No, you can't go out to recess until your math assignment is complete. Well, I learned to put them in the can zone and use yes because of what it did to their brain and the chemical response their auditory system got when they heard yes. I would say, yes, you can go out to recess when your math assignment is complete. And now the motivation is completely different. They didn't hear the word no, they heard yes, and they heard the expectation. And it's very amazing that you stop and listen to parents in the grocery store. Just listen to teachers, directors, anyone that's helping someone, mentoring them. How many times the word no, not until, that comes out, especially at the middle school or the elementary level. It's just critical that we all try to practice the can zone, okay? Here's another one. Instead of, no, you can't go out with your friends until your schoolwork is all caught up. Parents, yes, you can stay out until your curfew. There's the expectation with the yes. When you show you're responsible with your schoolwork and you're all caught up. And I've added to that, and let me help is another phrase that's very powerful for that auditory system to hear in the brain and process through. Let me help you with your homework. And boom, you have different expectations now and a different motive to get something done. And then the last one is the dessert. I have my husband say this. No, you can't have your dessert until you've eaten all your chicken nuggets. Well, I just try not to eat sugar, but you can say this. Yes, you can have your dessert when your chicken nuggets are gone. And there you can let the experience happen with a positive result in that brain. And when I say positive result, I mean the chemistry, the cause effect that happens within the brain when its senses filter yes, when, instead of no, not until. So that's just something to be aware of. And a lot of people know this. A lot of good teachers often are saying, yeah, sure, we can do that. Let's get this done first. When doesn't even have to be part of the phrase. So practice that today, tomorrow, and every day forward, and just pay attention to the different consequences of that act, a cause and an effect. We want it to be brain responsive. All right. Okay. And this is a powerful reminder. When those you serve consistently hear affirmation, positive responses, as opposed to negative responses, their brains naturally release neurotransmitters that enhance and improve the way they think, feel, and respond. This state of mind, that positive mind, that response to hearing certain things, is the foundation for hope, desire, and achievement. And when it's consistently applied, the subconscious brain now has framed out a different belief system. It's more hopeful, it's more desirable, and it really wants achievement. It doesn't get stuck in any other pattern. So this state of mind that we reference as being so powerful can be created and influenced by the language of the facilitator. And this state of mind that's so powerful can also be created and influenced by an empowerment model. All right, so creating conditions in which one can act on their own behalf. And that's how we define empowerment. And our entire approach, the brain responsive approach, is based on the empowerment model. So please take time, sit back, and take some notes on this, and definitely define empowerment for your team, your own kid, all right, your own students. I want you to say, we're going to create conditions around here where you can act on your own behalf because you're smart enough and you're worth it, all right? So this is because the brain responsive approach is an empowerment model, and the strategies and tactics used activate power in the learner. Now, the power inside me, we have a learning series that talks about what is learning. Well, learning is the ability to act and take care of my power. It's intangible. It is true inside of me. I have this. Everybody does. I have the ability to act on my own behalf because of my brain. Okay. So I have to create a condition for my students, my teachers that I teach, those that I lead in business, where they can act on their own behalf. That's empowerment. And that is one of the critical parts of activating power and encouraging new growth and development, all right, to understand the determinants of human behavior. And I have an amazing resource, and I call him one of my coaches. This is Dr. David Hawkins. He wrote the book Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. I came upon this book in early 2000s, about 2001, 2002, because I was studying Wayne Dyer's work, and he had the 10 secrets for success and inner peace. And I was studying it, trying to understand better with my students how to get them to be self-directed, to be self-reliant. And I knew power versus force was a big deal in education, because when you try to force a student to do something with punitive consequences, it doesn't always work out. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about as a teacher. So I was trying to understand this, studying Wayne Dyer, and he suggested this book. And it's because I was at Barnes & Noble at the time. If you guys all recall 2001, 2, and 3, Barnes & Noble was the place to go for your information. And it says, perhaps the most important and significant book I've read in the past 10 years. And this was written in 1997. So I was really excited to see Dr. Wayne Dyer say that. And I picked it up and took it home. And in his book, Power versus Force, the Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, Dr. Hawkins describes the differences between power and force. And this part made complete sense to me as a leader in education, a teacher of students that were very bright and very well supported, most of them, in their education by those around them, as well as students. Okay, so understanding students. So this is some of the things. This is quoted right out of the book. Power arises from meaning. Power is always associated with that which supports the significance of life itself. It appeals to that part of human nature that we call noble, in contrast to force, which appeals to that which we call crass. When I read that one part, I looked up at my 8th grade math, life science groups at Waverly, Nebraska. And I thought, wow, isn't that true? Because I had just learned so much about the brain and meaning. And if something's meaningless to you, it's really hard to get motivated to learn it. All right. So as we list and describe Dr. Hawkins' observations, I want you to consider our assertion that deficit remediation represents force. All right. And it inhibits. And while the brain responsive strategy and approach it represents power and it liberates. And this is the beginning of the brain responsive approach research that I did back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So Dr. Hawkins makes a number of corresponding observations in his book in an effort to further illustrate the differences between power and force. So force, it must be justified. Power requires no justification. Let me go on. Force is in constant movement. It has an appetite to be fed. Power remains still, giving energy and support. So you can think of something like the universal laws of gravity. Okay? Force, apple, is pulled to the ground by a gravitational force. It's in constant movement until it stops, right? And those apples will eventually have an appetite to fall because of the ripeness in the tree and the gravitational force it's constantly competing with. All right. Well, power, think of electrical lines. It remains still. It gives us energy and support, but there's no movement that's visible to us. Or your cell phone line, that's power activated within the ether. Okay. So power to humans is associated with compassion and positive feelings. When you're empowered to act on your own behalf, think of yourself with your boss, your kids, you feel good, all right? Well, force goes hand in hand with aggression and negative feelings. Even though people want to control, they know force isn't always the most effective thing because it's not positive, it's negative, and it's aggressive. So here's a simple example. I've witnessed it myself when a 4-year-old is testing limits and the adult might use force, cause effect, and swat the child's hand. When I worked at Walmart, I worked there to earn extra money, and it was convenient to our research, so I would witness parents swat the child's hand when they picked up something they weren't supposed to. So, however, using respectful words that elicit a positive response from the child engages the child's power as well as the adults. For example, oh, sweetie, let's put that down. The child puts it down. Would you hold this for me? Depending on the age, you can actually detour the brain and the attention so effectively, and it's by practicing it, that you never have to use force with a child and a student. When you combine these ideas of power versus force with the 4 power expectations, learners perceive their own power, the ability to act on their own behalf. And these are the research pieces that I implemented into the classroom on my own behalf. Instead of using force, I wanted to use power expectations and see what happened. And I knew it would cause the brain to naturally release neurotransmitters that enhance and improve the way one feels and the way one learns. And I knew this would happen with my students. They would feel better. So I'd like to take a moment to explain some of the typical expectations that had been posted in my classroom for years only because I didn't know. And this was before this book. I thought these were effective and appropriate, and they were actually ineffective and inappropriate to building power, the ability for someone to act on their own behalf. Now, these are classroom expectations, and they will fit under the deficit remediation control model in our schools. This is not an empowerment framework, and this is one of the key things we teach in our 6-week online course. They're followed by common sense facts and solutions to the challenges we face as parents, teachers, coaches, and leaders. Now, these were my top expectations in the environment, but I wanted you to see these. These were posted on the walls. And this was actually at my own sons went to Irving Middle School, and I was privileged to teach them in the classroom and be with their team of kids that they learned with. And this is what the team had decided to post in the hallway and in every classroom. So we had to enter classrooms quietly and prepared, follow directions, begin work promptly, stay on task, and work until the task is complete. We wanted kids to signal to speak so that we could learn and respect each other. We wanted them to use respectful language, and we wanted them to listen while others were speaking. And those were everywhere, posted on these big poster boards. And I was always challenged with these, because how do you expect them to enter quietly and prepared when there's 30 different learners coming in, and then it's a different kind of time of the day, much different in the morning after they've been at breakfast, or they're coming in from their homes, and they're calm and quiet at lunch, right before lunch when they're hungry, and they're coming into your classroom. Oh, and teachers, what about the time when you get the group after lunch, coming off of recess or free time, enter classroom quietly and prepared? That one expectation did not make sense to me, especially with dynamic learners and middle school learners. So it always was, what? I don't understand why we're saying this to them. So I started learning about power, of course, with that book and my trainings, and the rest just, again, become controlling people's behavior. Okay, they're common, familiar to most parents and teachers. These rules and directives provide safety among the group. Very important. We need to learn an objective today. In science, we need to make sure everybody understands the behavior needed. But it's also intended to keep control. And the only thing you can control is your own mind and thoughts, which lead to your behavior. So this was quite a challenge for me. And it's what I focused on all the time, and I figured it out. They hint something negative, and these control issues or these learning community expectations, they're really rules about how to act. That's not empowering, and it's not what we call brain responsive, okay? They imply that the behavior is to be controlled through a set of rules for which there are rewards, the learning, right? And the consequences. And some people have punishment to be earned or suffered. And now it's force. It's not empowerment. So it's a deficit remediation framework. This control framework of expectation shows evidence of force, as it will always follow with one of the two behaviors. And here's what I had an aha in my classroom. Again, I didn't know what this was called, but it was the way it went. I didn't have deficit remediation yet, but I knew something was negative. So the learner will follow the expectations and be polite and come in and sit down and be ready to learn and do everything that you're telling them to do, right? In those expectations. Or you have learners that will not. They will not come prepared. They will not follow directions. They will not come in quietly. You all can relate, parents also, because we've been called on it ourselves, right? And as their teacher, parent, coach, or leader, you've created a counterforce, whether they do or don't follow those classroom expectations. Now, if they do follow those expectations, you have to be prepared to provide the next conditions that lead to the success and achievement. Here's where you get roped in the deficit remediation educational model, do the work that's really the brain work of those that are learning. You're mentoring, leading, and instructing, right? You're the expert in the field. But in other words, the learner's going to say, what are the next steps? And this is what the learner will actually ask you as they reflect on this forceful expectation. So follow directions. Well, what are the directions? Even those well-controlled, focused learners are not self-directed or self-reliant, right? If they don't meet up to all of your forceful, right, even if it's in the ether, but it's there, expectations, you will have to be prepared to provide the consequences. And this is where I would get crazy in my mind. That will motivate them to follow those expectations that they're not following. What are the consequences? Well, many of you can relate, as you've had to help manage and inspire someone who doesn't meet your forceful expectations, right? Pointing out what they didn't do, deficit remediation framework. And there's this fact: people control their own behavior based on their own perceptions and their sense of identity. So now I'm going against this fact. I don't control their behavior. People control their own behavior, but it has to be based on their own perception, right? And how they identify in the world, not by control. All right, here's another fact that will blow your mind. When learners don't meet up to your expectations, or as some would say, act out, they are rarely thinking clearly about the consequences of their actions. And I know there's teachers sitting there going, oh, Mary, I know that. I've had that experience even today. They're acting out because they're hungry. Their emotions are unstable because another person just put them down that you're not aware of. They might be extremely tired and they're not thinking clearly because they've had a lack of sleep because they were gaming all night and their parents don't know it. And their parents are like, what's going on? So there's a lot of different things. So there's another myth that I want to address real quick, and people need to know the punishments and the consequences for breaking rules before they will follow them. This was something a teacher said to me. Well, they have to know the consequences so that they'll follow the rules. And I said, no, most people know to get to class on time. I know a kindergartner that can get himself to the bathroom and back because he knows the teacher starts her story time from their agenda that she went over. And there was no consequence of anything other than, if I don't go to the bathroom, I'll have an accident. So he runs to the bathroom and he runs back because she has set up the expectation of give your best effort, pay attention, dignify yourself, and go potty if you need to. That's what I witnessed with her. And that child is empowered to learn and knows what's going on. There's no consequence or punishment to that setup. So bear with me. We will teach you how to set it up for all ages so that they respond in a motivated, self-directed, self-reliant way, the brain responsive way. Okay. Now there's another fact that I need you to absorb. Most people are naturally inclined to follow rules that are reasonable and effective. Okay. We get outcries of this is not right when it doesn't seem reasonable, or you're trying to control someone. They will tell you that's not reasonable. You need to trust me. So the additional myth, listing rules and consequences helps learners understand what is expected. And it makes it clear that they will have consequences if rules are broken. Again, heavy emphasis on deficit remediation framework. And listing expectations that activate power in the learners creates a sense of how to act, right? As opposed to a specific description of how not to act. So this was clever and very well studied and practiced through my middle school years, 25 years of research of this, as well as on our swim team with, I think it was 9 years of coaching swimmers. We tried not to point out the mistakes, all right, because we didn't want to use deficit remediation. So we focus on that which was done correctly and ask the learners to self-evaluate, and this will cover the same basis without any negative feelings being produced by the mentor or coach. And that's what empowerment is. And as you practice the consequence of empowerment, where you're focusing on that which was done correctly and asking the learner to self-evaluate in the classroom, on the field, in the office where you work, focus on what's done correct, you will see them respond completely different. If you saw the argument or challenge explained in this series, you know that the challenge we face is the way the deficit remediation has dominated our culture's approach to the learning scenario. Now remember, deficit remediation describes the practice of evaluating learners and their performance predominantly by pointing out mistakes and errors that need to be fixed and practiced. So current brain research, just a reminder, suggests that the brain does not respond to deficit remediation effectively due to the negative impact of the neurotransmitters that the brain and body release during negative feedback that is perceived or received. So you can't control how that other mind is thinking, and you cannot control the reaction they have to your words. But if you use words that are power words, right? Empowerment, and create conditions where they can act on their own behalf, you would obviously want to point out their strengths, correct? Because when someone points out your strengths, you feel empowered and you feel good, right? Now, I want you to consider the brain responsive example of a swim coach who sees a swimmer whose left arm is dragging and is too low on almost every stroke, as opposed to saying, Olivia, lift your arm. Your left arm is dragging. Get that elbow up. And expecting that to be enough to correct the left arm. Well, the brain responsive approach asks the learner to process and reflect. They got to use their thinking. Olivia, how did you feel about your technique on the last 50 yards? She now has a question posed to her and she has to think through her process. Do you remember how your left arm felt? You guide her into what you want her to identify. What adjustments do you think would help? If she doesn't come up with that adjustment, then you can guide her then. But you see if she can come up with it herself. Now she's sent the electrochemical firing into neurotransmitters into their organic tissue, and she's now building networks of problem solving and being self-directed, right? Now, these questions force the learner to engage their own frontal cortex of their brain and reflect on their performance. This will leave the performer, the student, the athlete, feeling as if they corrected the problem themselves, and they actually will with their thinking, okay? In the process, the feel-good transmitters being released have a much more powerful impact on the learner, self-directed, self-reliant. Oh, and by the way, that was you who just empowered them with your strategy and your language, okay? So what are the first steps one can take to establish the brain responsive approach? Where does it all begin? And how do we put down deficit remediation and uplift learners of all ages? Well, the first thing we have to do is establish what we call the 4-power perception. Expectations. This is wrong on the screen. We're going to give our personal best. We expect dignity and respect. We expect truthfulness. And we expect active listening in the learning arena, okay? So these 4 expectations seem reasonable and achievable to all learners, right? They do not elicit the same negative connotations as rules and consequences. Follow directions, come in quietly, okay? This kind of allows individuals to be their best at who they are as learners. And there's a variety of different learners coming into that classroom with a variety of different secondary needs, the psychological needs that are learned, right? So remember, we go over those strategies next week, teaching you about the primary and secondary needs. This week, I want you to get in touch with what power is. Now, generally, we address any and all behavior issues that arise. I'm one of those teachers that addresses it all because I have really good expectations of every day, what's going to go on. Now, these expectations also have an intense effect on perception, right? So if I expect your personal best, dignity and respect for yourself and others, expect you to be truthful to yourself and others, and expect you to actively listen to yourself and others, right? This affects your perception, okay? Now, if I expect your personal best, that's for you to decide what's best, and now I'm starting to feel significant. I feel capable. If I give dignity and respect, and I respect myself, I'm responsible, and I'm successful, and I guarantee those kids that are not successful in your classroom, when you start to ask them about their perception of who they are with their friends, with their family, with you in the classroom, they might not feel significant. They might not perceive themselves as capable, or they might not perceive themselves as responsible. That's the learned helplessness that goes on with certain individuals in learning. And successful has to happen from continued achievement and reaching the goals that you set for kids and that they set for themselves. So power perceptions and expectations. So these power perceptions grow in the learner as they are empowered and expected to give their personal best, dignify and respect, be truthful, and use active listening. They're an example of empowerment as opposed to control, or power versus force. Now, in our 6-week online course, The Brain Responsive Approach, our master class, you'll have access to more examples of the most effective strategies, okay, to help develop self-directed, self-reliant learners. And our registration page is, for summer registration, it's opened at www.brainacademy.com/registration-page, and you'll find that. So for now, it can be summarized as such. If our goal is to inspire and grow self-directed, self-reliant individuals, then we must empower them to feel significant, capable, responsible, and successful. And we accomplish this by establishing power expectations that call for the best effort, dignity and respect, truthfulness, and active listening. And this set of expectations eliminates and replaces any list of rules or any consequences for breaking the rules. So it's never too late to simplify. Starting today, expect from your learners and your own kids and your office staff and those that you lead personal best, dignity and respect, truthfulness, and active listening. And that will develop within them, as well as the community surrounding them, power perceptions that I am significant, I'm capable, I'm responsible, and I'm successful. And that activates the power. And now you have self-directed, self-reliant learners. So I want you to download the Power Expectations poster. It's free at the link provided here, and I will put that below this video at YouTube. So when you see this, we'll also have it posted with the links on YouTube at Teach to the Brain channel. And in addition, I want you to click like and share on Facebook or any other social media platform if you see that there. And leave a comment, okay? Because our goal is to connect 10,000 this summer, and we will be accomplishing that with your help. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining the Brain Responsive Movement. To those of you that opted in at our subscriber list, we're excited to be collaborating with you. And until next lesson, I want you to always remember, teach to the brain and the heart will follow.